Good morning, and actually, I'm already into the third cup of tea. I told you I really come from a kind of Anglo background. They've been busy this morning, and as you can see behind me, the air is saturated. It's nice and moist after months of really dry air, with me constantly, with the itchy nose, playing with my nose, picking boogers. I don't really have that urge this morning. I'm not, because it's working. Instead of it drying in my nose and it's all coming anyway. I just had just finished watching a black and white called "The Guilt of Janet Ames," and I got a notification. It's because sometimes when I'm watching a movie, my notifications don't all come through, and then I saw I had an email from Cass Comerford, and we had an exchange about. He was telling me about the some of the classic black and whites he was watching and stuff. He had watched the movie I had recommended, and then he mentioned a couple more, including A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And it kind of made me think about our lives. Cass and I are of a generation where movies were pretty much, you know, the highlight of our existence and stuff. And I'm not sure if he had, I think he was in a kind of a rural area, and even we had in Little Bryan, Texas, we had one TV station. You had to have an antenna and the right meteorology to be able to pick up a couple of Houston channels late at night and stuff. And TV on, like, when I was a kid, TV went off on Sunday night, uh, you know, right after the news. 10:30 was off, and on every night it would go off at midnight. Uh, but anyway, uh, Cass and I think I had a little more. I think he lived in more of to my knowledge, he lived in kind of a more rural area, and there were just less opportunities. A little smaller town, and he chose the path. He used to pay for, I think his. He can correct me if I'm wrong. As I remember, he would kind of jump the fence and get to the. See, back in the day, you young kids don't remember that we used to recycle the bottles. We returned the bottles for the deposit so they could wash and refill the bottles, the soda pop bottles. And he'd snag a few bottles and then, return them and get enough money to go to the movies and stuff. But I was fortunate enough to have, a dad that was cooperative and uh, uh, have neighbors that are always constantly in need of, you know, lawns being mowed for cheaper than what a grown man would do it. And then I had you know, I guess the good fortune, if you could call it that, of going to work in my brother's business when I was 7 years old, which constant employment and even got me a little closer to the movie theaters. My biggest problem as a kid, because they noise. My biggest problem as a kid was that they didn't really show many movies on TV. Although a lot of those things now are classics and stuff like that. Yeah, we were strictly CBS was our primary channel in both Bryan and Waco anyway. But in those days, man, it was like it, primarily like right in downtown Bryan, we had the Palace Theater, Al Shulman. The Shulman family had been in the theater business there in Bryan since they've been the preeminent family since 1920. And they had the Palace, but they had the old Queen Theater across the street, which was an older theater. And it wasn't always showing stuff. There was, I think, also the Dixie, but the Dixie was shut down. I think the Dixie just kind of But the Queen Theater kind of played more to the college kids that did live in Bryan and stuff, and they often showed art flicks where you might occasionally see a bare breast or something like that. And it just wasn't a place where we kids went. It wasn't. Uh, and usually, Owl would only show like 2 movies a week, and they would change on like a Wednesday and stuff like that. And they weren't double features. You had to, you know, he'd show different movies at different times, but often it would only be like one movie at a time and stuff. And we frequently, I think Cass was getting his for, I think they were still on the pound then, so he was getting his for about a shilling, about a nickel or somewhere in that range. We were paying 25 cents for children. I think it was 50 cents for adults or something. And actually, the concessions are reasonable and stuff. You know, they're compared to now, they want $20 for a little container of popcorn that cost almost nothing to produce. But I remember what a big influence and how important movies were to us kids. It was to adults too, but they always, spurred on our imagination. We needed that. It's in a lot of ways, it's better than reading a book. It depends on the kind of the book. Some books paint great word pictures, and some don't. And it's like I can remember like Amel and the Detectives. When that comes on, I watched that as a kid, and then after that, I wanted to be a detective. You were every week you wanted to be whatever the kind of the hero character was, or whoever the main character was, whatever kind of personality. It's for a while, a week or a month, you wanted to be that person. They wanted to be that character. Media is very influential. It's kind of part of our problem right now is we're making movies that glamorize. Well, they did too back then. I guess the gangster movies and stuff but now they're glamorizing a kind of weirdos. But who's to anyway? Actually, I could tell that the guilt of Janet Ames, I knew because I remembered the final scene. I'm pretty sure I saw that watching Ralph Williams all night movies, funded out of. He was actually, I found out later, I thought he was just San Jose, but he was actually all up and down the West Coast. I've posted some of his stuff, his commercials on my community posts. If you go scroll through it, got a few hundred of them up there. He was crazy. He would bash his cars. Some of that stuff was strictly adults only kind of, but that's, you were permitted to after, I think, 11 o'clock at night. But I was, that The Guilt of Janet Ames may have been one of those movies that I saw while I was recovering and going through the withdrawal. It's funny how their withdrawal process used to be, jam up and jelly tight. The way they did it was guaranteed to. I guess I'm going to venture into talking about that for a second rather than the movies. But man, back in the days, I mean, like, soda pop, especially if you were a kid and could, get your own soda pop and pay for your own movies and stuff like that. Cass had his hustle. I had my hustle. Good fizzy drinks, as the English call them. Movies, it was grand, as the Irish say. That'll be grand. I just love that the wealth of characters and stuff that you get presented to, because it's often so different than your community. It's can be very good for you, although a lot of the movies now are very bad for children's mental health. They're not, at least in the gangster days and stuff like that, we still understood that he was a gangster going nowhere. That he always ended up, look at me, ma, top of the world, as the refinery goes up in flames and stuff. Jimmy Cagney. And, it's, anyway, like I said, during most of my adult years, I don't like theaters. I don't like sticky floors. I don't like people talking and yammering. And at least we're allowed to smoke in theaters. I'm sure Cass will agree with that one. And then when we started taking smoking out of theaters, they actually first started where, you know, no smoking in the center. If you're a smoker, you had to sit off to one of the side things. And we had difference. There was loge where you paid a little extra to get a seat up in the what would be called balcony, and it would be a more comfortable, more thickly padded chair. LOGE, loge. But most of my adult life, I fell behind compared to, say, like when I was recovering from having my leg reconstructed. And they did it in a process where they went from the heavy morphine use of the hospital, and then they actually went to a form of oxycodone called Percodan. And that's just as potent as the morphine, and they move you down. And eventually, the last one is Darvon, which, just like its cousin methadone, Darvon relieves some pain, but it produces a shit ton of withdrawal. I think I can get away with saying that on PG-13. This is what I'm rating them as. It produced a ton of withdrawal symptoms. Methadone relieves no pain and just makes you ill. Methadone, I'm quoting the textbooks, the college textbooks. All methadone produces is withdrawal symptoms. It does not relieve pain. Only if you're using it as an active placebo, which means there's nothing wrong with your human inflammatory response. Just like Tylenol, it's just a poison. Active placebo. That's what the textbooks say. You ain't getting me on that one. In Australia and England, it goes by names like paracetamol or stuff like that. But like I told you before, I'm bipolar too. I sometimes have opposite reactions to medications. And when you're in a lot of pain, and the opioids would keep me awake, even in the hospital, I rarely slept much and stuff. The nurses, after 11, 12 o'clock, they'd bring me sandwiches and stuff like that. And I'd stay up until the wee hours watching, Ralph Williams on all-night movies and stuff out of San Jose. And got in the habit. And at home, I was allowed to, because I was really messed up. If that surgery was unsuccessful, I would have been crippled for life. It was successful. It was a great surgeon, Lloyd Taylor. If a doctor is a piece of poo, I'm going to call him that. And if you're a great surgeon and a great doctor, you get praise from me. I don't cut doctors any slack. If you're good or great, I'll say it. But if you're not, I ain't giving you no respect. You don't deserve it. But I watched so many movies that just, because, gosh, we could usually get in between. I think you would start it because they're like news didn't come on to like 10:30 or something. So after 11 until 6 in the morning or something like that, or 7 in the morning, we could usually cram in about 4 or 5 movies depending on the length of the movie. Plan 9 from Outer Space, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, Glenn or Glenda. When first I saw that on, it was really one of the first transvestite movies where the writer, producer, director was also the star. Glenn or Glenda. That's required viewing to get your degree in film. Watch a bunch of those. The Attack of the 50-Foot Tall Woman, all these movies, saw them all. But I'm sure my recall of them was affected by the fact that I was taking enormous quantities. I was usually taking an LD-99 of some opioid 4 times a day. You try going through the same surgery as I did and see how well you but I had no trouble kicking that Darvon really did it. Darvon just makes you feel so sick, because I had an ad lib prescription. I was one of the last people to have an ad lib prescription in this country. And when I got to that point, I just go like, no, I'm good enough now, because I've been going through, walking and quadriceps therapy, rehab, which is extremely painful. But the focus here is on movies and stuff. And there's just so many of these really great or interesting black and white movies. And they're just, that especially considering how relatively inexpensive so many of them were produced compared to today, where they shoot crap movies and it costs them $100-200 million for garbage. It's, they got really no dialogue. They really they don't develop the character. The characters are just lame, and the story's lame. It's all based on, visual effects, stuff like that, and about it just. I think there was a greater level of creativity. There's the Saturday morning fixed gear fever crowd that are bucking for bike lanes all over the place. At taxpayers' expense. I'm kind of compulsively, but actually my nose isn't itching like it normally does. And if you notice, I ain't picked my nose once yet in 18 minutes. But there's so many movies, and here you go. It's probably a nose hair more than anything. I've been plucking them things forever. I kept plucking them until they just kind of finally disappeared. So, gosh, I think about all them old movies that, some of them stick in your head. I think wasn't it Richard Crenna who kind of got his start in a weird oddball movie called Wrong Way, Go Forth or something like that. And there's just there's so many movies that were. Fathom, that was Raquel Welch's, I think, debut movie. Fathom means 6 foot. She's supposed to be tall. And I think that was made even before she did, where they shrink them in that little deal and send them in to cure a blood clot or whatever, blood clot on the brain or something. Incredible Journey or something like that. And there were just so many of them. I love movies. Movies are a great escape. They're great for stimulating the imagination and making people think and stuff. It's a lot of effort just gone into the making of movies, and particularly the good movies. It's really hard to find good movies nowadays. That's why as a matter of fact, I've subscribed to a channel that's got a ton of them in it. There's so many. I'm kind of, because I've really have seen the best of the color movies made in the the last 30 or 40 years. I've even owned copies of I've owned DVDs. I think at one point I had about 20 to 30,000 movies on DVD, because sometimes I'd buy the packs where you get 5 or 10 or 12 or 20, or on a bargain basement deal at Walmart. And I've been really trying to enjoy my retirement, and for now about a 15-year period, I've been just trying to immerse myself in watching movies, getting drunk, getting high. I like getting drunk. I like to go to Walmart, buy 3 or 4 movies, $3 a pop, never more than 5. And then they're good movies, they're and stuff. They just made their full first, and get a couple of bottles of wine. You can see it on other, and the great thing is you can watch a really good movie and really enjoy it when you're drunk, and then after you after you sober up and stuff, you can watch it while you're sober. And sometimes I enjoy it more when I'm drunk, and when I watch it when I'm sober, I'm going like, it wasn't that good. But the great thing is you get to watch them twice without really, because the alcohol kind of blanks out a lot of the movie for you. So I kind of get double my value off of them. But man, I bought thousands of DVDs. So they're just, if I took the time, I'd be here for an hour talking about all the movies I went to see as a kid that was so influential. I remember, I think actually I was reading like the Doc Savage, little novels about, before they ever made the first Doc Savage film. And there was an actual Doc Savage in Caldwell, Texas. But there's so many of them. And I even got to see the original Batman. I've mentioned this before. The Batman series, they had it showing when I was like 18 at the campus theater at Texas A&M. And you go in, it's like a festival kind of, because every segment's only about 15 minutes long. And, when you pay your ticket, you're paying to see all, I saw the first Batman serial, on film. It was hilarious. Like he would reach into his utility belt, he'd reach behind his cape, and all of a sudden pull out, like a giant, which was then about they could have actually gone, I think they had smaller ones, but he had pulled out one of them. This is called the E-size, or it's supposed to be like 120 cubic foot of oxygen. Just pull out this gigantic oxygen tank out of nowhere. But it was, I think that was the same theater in which I saw Woody Allen's Everything You Wanted to Know About Sex But Were Afraid to Ask. I love movies. I mean, don't you? Uh, it's just a question of how good are they. Uh, I've been fortunate enough, and I'm pretty picky too on the. There's such an abundance of movies that, especially these modern movies, if they don't hook me, if they don't develop flow, and if the action doesn't flow, if the camera doesn't move, if the dialogue doesn't pick up momentum very quickly, well, I'm gone. Uh, sampling movies to find out whether or not they're worth watching is time consuming. That's why I've been kind of focusing on the black and whites, because I can usually tell by the actors, but not always, because that movie that I mentioned, I hadn't heard of any of those actors before. There was nobody. I usually judge movies by, number one, who are the actors. Number two, and equally as important, is who is the producer or director, producer, and that's so I often go on. It's, like if you're talking about the Scott boys, Ridley Scott, Tom Scott, that's usually a good one. It's, you can usually count on a number of them. Uh, but I pretty much have caught up on all the color movies in the last 30 years. I think I've seen all of them that are worth watching. And I have an eye for movies that you would think they're like Julien Donkey Boy. To me, that was a fascinating movie because it looks like cinema verite, but it's not. And that's why the producer director of it, she won awards for that movie. It's all about kind of psychosis and all sorts of shit. And I have kind of an eclectic taste in movies. I go the full range from science fiction, anything with, pretty much anything based on Philip K. Dick, and stuff like that is uh, great. There's just so much out there. I think I'd want to live longer just to get to watch more movies. It's sure they're not real, but some of them are realer than real. They kind of compress a real person's life into a short time and really allows you to, and some, they not only entertain, but they provoke you to thought and to feel. And I have been, of late, kind of a cold person towards people around me. And because I've been in a combat zone, you have a tendency to become hardened and put up walls and barriers, and you deliberately, kind of fight getting to know people, kind of intimately, because, most of the time, and where I was at, you get to know somebody well and stuff, and then next thing you know, they're screwing you over. So kind of slow and hesitant at times. Anyway, Cass, thanks for, because actually I'm sure I watched A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, but I'll have to go back and watch it again now to refresh my memory. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you watch a movie when it's in its first run 46 times and spend hundreds of dollars doing that, you're a little obsessive, and maybe you got a bad memory. But some people do that. They'll go back, like take the movie No Country for Old Men. People would keep going back to that until they memorized all the lines, because there's not that many lines in it. It became a big cult classic. So anyway, it's a pretty good morning. I think Starbucks, the first couple hours after they were open, they only had about 100 vehicles. It's only now beginning to get some kind of real activity here. It's pretty quiet between from the time that I got up until about now. It wasn't very, it's pretty peaceful. I think part of that's because it's just kind of a nice, moist. It's not exactly a sunny Saturday where everybody's just dying to immediately get out and get into the sun and run around. It's it's warm, but not you know it's not exactly short. It's coming up a little bit, but it was around 70 around dawn. It's just not a. I don't think there are any festivals planned for today that I know of. And a lot of people are really focused on will they have a job or will they be deported after the next few days. I think I'm going to leave it at that because that's already 31 minutes. Cass, thanks for the email this morning. It got me to thinking about, gosh, I spent like 6 months after I got out of the hospital, just pretty much, I'd kind of nap or snooze a little bit during the day. And then during the night, I'd just be popping pills, which I legally prescribed, and sitting up and really grooving and watching all those cool old movies that Ralph Williams paid for. To get to see those same movies now at like a film festival, it cost you an arm and a leg. I saw really all of the movies that you're required to see to get a degree in film. That's what they were telling me at UCLA. You can get a degree in film. We could get you a bachelor's based on just what you're telling us and everything we know. And you have a good critique of them. They have actual books that listed all the movies I'd already seen. And would have an opinion on every one of them. That could be easily expanded into a paper. And they wanted me to not only do the English and Spanish department, stuff like that, but take film so I could get my first bachelor's by the time I was 19. And he said, you'd breeze through it. You're good at writing, you're good at doing a critique, and I just keep thinking about all those old classic movies that you can't hardly find anymore. I don't think many of them are available on YouTube without you paying for them. If you go looking for them, they're going to want you to pay for them. That's the way YouTube operates. If you type in the name of a movie you'd like to see, like, Plan 9 from Outer Space or something like that, The Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, or the 50-foot woman, or 50-foot tall woman, and they're going to probably want you to pay for it. There's so many others. Glenn or Glenda, that always stood out because I remember going like, I've never seen a movie like this before. Is that Glenn or Glenda? There was a lot of those movies were the basis of the movie called The Celluloid Closet, about the gay community within filmmaking. And I think they even colorized it or something to kind of show that, like the hairdresser dude was actually wearing a purple sash. But I enjoy a great movie. The one I just watched this morning, actually, I'm pretty sure I saw that before. That one comedian, he puts on a real high energy towards the end of the movie. He puts in a real high energy. Sorry, I can't remember the name. But if you saw him, if you're my age range, you'd instantly recognize him as, one of the great comics of American comedy. There's such a wealth of talent in the cinema and in movies, and I'm proud to say that I know, I'm friends with somebody who's an Australian star. Cass Comerford, like I said, without you as the canvas, they wouldn't have won the Best Makeup Award and talked to me. It wouldn't have happened. You were absolutely the perfect canvas for them to create, to coin the kind of the monster of the movie. Don't want to give away any more than that. You people can afford Netflix and stuff. Go ahead and pay for it and watch it. Talk to me. And while you're at it, watch Flathead. It's a good movie. I would like to see it on a big screen and not this telephone, though. It's a good movie. It's in a lot of ways great and stuff, and particularly they use that switch from black to white to color and back to black and white. It's a good, and like I always say, I'm not going to tell you the ending. And I kind of, when I saw the ending, I realized that, yeah, I've heard those words before in emails. It kind of, but I was strictly had a hush-hush agreement with it, not the. Anyway, my review of Flathead's up on my channel. A lot of you people don't seem to know how to search for it after I mention it. If I talk about it, I've usually talked about it before. If you subscribe to the channel, all you have to do is search my now 1,600 videos. But anyway, I just want to actually say thanks to all those people that devoted their life to entertaining us. Oh, I think my battery, yeah, but I'm still rolling. I want to thank all those people that, a lot of them did it for selfish reasons and for attention, but then don't we all? You know, we all want to achieve or, be noted, or, and most everybody, unless you're like a hitman or something, you want to be noticed by other people. You want to be thought well of and stuff. So anyway, here's a hats off to all you movie makers and all you actors and actresses that work so hard and stuff. And most of you, even SAG, Screen Actors Guild will admit that there's 20,000 actors out there that are members of the union, the guild, that are just barely making a living doing, character, just being a character actor. I met a couple of really famous ones in Santa Barbara one day, and, we had a nice little chat and stuff like that. I go like, forgive me, guys. Everybody knows your faces. What's your name again? That's all they wanted. They were really nice guys. If I could pull up the pictures of them, you'd instantly recognize them because they've been in hundreds and hundreds of movies and TV shows. Sometimes being a character actor can earn you a decent living and make you famous. I'll see you guys later. Cass, thanks for the email this morning. I have no idea what time it is there now. I think it's probably middle of the night or late night. So enjoy some movies. I'll email you back I'll have to separate it from the other ones. I'll try to email you the channel title that I just subscribed to, because he's got all these playlists. They're just loaded with all these old British and American English black and whites and stuff. I've just begun to go through his playlists. And anyway, I'll see you guys later. Y'all have a good day, but it looks like it's going to be, there's a chance of rain an hour or two, but I don't think it's going to happen. And we need this moist air, so I'm not constantly picking my nose on camera. Have I stuck my little finger up my nose yet? No, because I don't have to. I apologize for my behavior like that, but it was just so irritating to have all them little dried things in there just itching my nose. I hope it don't rain because really the nearest overhang where I wouldn't bother the business is at Walmart, and that'll cost me, like $18 round trip to go up there, and I'd probably want to carry this wheelchair. That would be Uber XL instead of using one of their wheelchairs, which they'd get annoyed after a while. So, but if need be, I'll just pull out my umbrella, my tarp, and just hunker down right here because I don't see any serious rain on the radar. Y'all have a good day. I'll be back talking politics later, but I felt like talking about movies in a weird way, because most young people at the age of 16 are not allowed to. I was allowed to because I was severely injured and we weren't sure I'd ever walk again. I was allowed to stay up all night, smoke pot, pop, opioids all night long, and watch some of the best, movies ever made. Some of the true classics and stuff. Some of that stuff was, so over the top. It was hilarious, so, and people in other parts of the countries, they didn't have a chance to do that, and not for free, and they couldn't get them as much as, because you'd usually get in four movies, because a lot of those movies were only about an hour long. You could get in four movies between 11 till 7. Yeah. Ralph Williams, owe you a great debt, sir. Thank you for the all-night movies. Anyway, my best to Shabbat Shalom, everybody. My best to you and yours, and may God bless, and or Buddha bless, or whatever your preference is. And Cass, it was great hearing from you this morning. I could tell you were in a good mood from watching some good old black and whites. Cass, I love you. Now that'll turn into I love you, old man. Young man, I'm supposed to call you. You do great work. Keep working, Cass. You need that. I need it. Constantly need an objective. That's what I'm doing all the time. And I know you enjoy it. Anyway, y'all have a good one.